guys, welcome back to my channel and to the final episode of my UI Table View, the Ultimate Tutorial series. In this episode, we are going to learn how to implement a detail view for our Amiibo list to then, for example, display an Amiibo image in a larger manner. Let's see how that looks like. For example, for Dr. Mario, if we tap on it, we will see Dr. Mario larger, with its label or name actually, and also having a button to dismiss the detail view again. Selecting Yoshi, selecting Link, Majora's Mask. And so let's dive right into it and implement that detail view. First of all, we will run our current app state to see whether it still works and where we have left off last time. And if we tap on something, nothing happens, but we can still count up and delete stuff. So everything looks fine. The first thing we want to do is implement our detail view controller. So therefore we will go here and create a new file, call it Amiibo detail view controller. Copy that name because we will need that for the class definition as well. Import UIKit instead of foundation and have the name for the class Amiibo detail view controller and then inherit from UI view controller. So that's it for now. That's our view controller, our detail view controller. It does not do much yet, but we will get back to it in a second. Let's go back to our Amiibo list view controller, so the list view controller, and scroll to the bottom where we have our delegate implementation, right? The trailing swipe and the leading swipe function. Inside here, we can implement the did select row add function. And this function basically gets called whenever you are tapping on a row. It gets called and passes in the index which row you have tapped. And that's what we want. We want to know which row we have tapped to then get our Amiibo, instantiate or create the detail view controller, assign our Amiibo to a local property of that detail view controller, and then present it. So basically 4 steps, and it's also just 4 lines of code. Let's do it. So our Amiibo, out of our Amiibo list at Amiibo list at the index path.row. So we have our Amiibo now. Let's create our Amiibo detail view controller, just creating a new instance, Amiibo detail view controller, just like that. And now our Amiibo detail view controller is not having any properties to like store the Amiibo. So let's fix that. Go back to our Amiibo detail view controller and say we have a variable, let's call it Amiibo of type Amiibo for view, right? And be an optional. Because when we are creating the instance of that class, this property will be nil at that point. At this point, line 127, this property is nil. But let's change that by accessing our Amiibo detail view controller and its property and assign our Amiibo that we just pulled out of our list, right? We are assigning our Amiibo to the property of that view controller. And now we can just say self present, because present, this function here, is implemented by the UI view controller already, from which we are inheriting. So we are using that to present a view controller instance. So let's pass in our Amiibo detail view controller in here, say yes, true for an animation, and no completion. So nothing should happen once the animation is done. So that is all we need for actually presenting the view controller. Let's go back to our Amiibo detail view controller because we want to make sure we see that everything actually works properly. And for that, let's give our detail view controller a background. So view did load, super view did load, and now, whoops, one space too many. And now let's say our view is having a background color of green, right? So we're not using Amiibo yet. We are just storing it here. But let's just see that everything worked out fine by running the app and tapping on a Amiibo or on an Amiibo. So Mario Wedding, it's a green. And we can't dismiss it because there's no dismiss button, and we also can't see, of course, an Amiibo image or name. Let's fix that. So let's create an image view that is our custom image view. instance of our custom image view, because that custom image view, if you remember correctly, is able of loading an image based on a URL. That's what we want. And let's create a function that says setup image. And all it does is adding the subview of image view, like adding image view as a subview to the view. And now let's constrain it. So where do we want to place it? First of all, set that one to false. And now let's say we want to place it in the center of the x-axis, right? So image view center x anchor should be constrained to the view's center x anchor is active equals true. And let's say we want it to be at constrained to the top anchor, but with a little of spacing. But not the top anchor of the screen, which starts here, but actually from the save area, which starts right underneath the notch and right underneath the time and everything else, and then have a little spacing. So let's also define our save area, which is var save area of type UI layout guide exclamation mark. And we are, when view the load executes, we want to assign to our save area from the view the layout margins guide. So that's our save area we can use now. And then we say image view top anchor should be constrained to the save area's top anchor, but with a constant of, let's say, 50. Activate that. And now our image view is placed like 50 points from the save area and on the center of the axis. But it's not having any width or height. Let's change that as well. Let's say we want to give our image view a dynamic height. So actually basically a dynamic width. So the width should be always the half of the screen width. So that if we have an iPhone 4 and we only have a width of, let's come up with a random number of 200, then we will have an image width of 100. If we have a larger phone like iPhone 10 with, I don't know, a width of 300 points, then our image width would be 150 points. So it's always maintaining the same width aspect ratio to the screen width, right? So let's do that by simply doing the width anchor should be constrained to the save areas with anchor, but with a multiplier of 0.5 and activate that. True. Did I do anything wrong? Equal to constant. Yeah, that's the wrong one. Equal to. So, right, if the width is 500, for example, multiplied by 0.5, it's 200. And so we are assigning the width to our image view of 250. Sorry, 250. And if the width of the screen size is, I don't know, 300 because it's a smaller phone, then multiplied by 0.5, it's 150 that we are using and assigning to our image view. And let's use the same number that we set to our width of our image view to set our height as well. So we end up with a square, right? So the height anchor should be constrained equal to the image view's width anchor, just like that. And that basically is if our width ends up being 250, then we're using that width to also set our height to 250. And we will always end up with an image view of a square. Don't get confused with the image itself, right? It's just the image view that contains the image. The image itself, how that is scaled, is based on the image, whether it's portrait mode, landscape, maybe it's a square even, but that is not influenced by the image views height and width. All right, and then also finally, let's do an image content mode. Let's set the content mode to scale aspect fit. So it always scales the image until it fits the box. For example, if we have the box and the height of the image, it's portrait mode image, it will scale until it hits the borders and then say stay there. And the width is just like scaled and it maintains the aspect. Same goes if it's a landscape thing. So let's call the function up here. So we actually are setting up the image, and we can now implement a setup data function that will actually let the image view load or download the image from the Amiibo URL. So let's call a function called setupData. And in here, we are making sure that the Amiibo is actually given, right? Because it's an optional and we want to make sure when we are using it that it's given. So we are accessing then the image view and say load image from URL. All right, you already see it's not a string, but a URL that we are expecting. So, and Amiibo, if we are looking inside of here, is having an image URL based on or of type string. So let's also create an instance URL, let URL based on string, passing in the Amiibo image URL just like that. Let's make the format a little bit nicer, and then we are using it, right? So now we are using the URL and we are loading the image once the Amiibo is given, and the URL is also not failing when we are trying to create it based on the string, because the string could also be, I don't know, having special character because it's coming from an API. Who knows what the API is actually providing. Okay, let's run the app and let's have a look. So we have our list here, and let's tap on Luigi. We don't see anything. And we don't see anything because we haven't set up our data. So we have set up our image, but we haven't set up our data, which is basically downloading the image, right? So let's rerun the app and have a look once again, and let's tap on Mario Wedding, and we have Mario Wedding displayed properly in its right aspect ratio. We cannot dismiss the view because we don't have the button yet. Let's just rerun the app and select a different Amiibo. And let's try, for example, let's try something random. Let's try Link. Link Skyward Sword. It just works properly. Perfect. Let's implement a label to display the name, and also let's implement a button to be able to dismiss the detail view again. So let's have a name label being a UI label. Whoops, not UI Babel, but god damn it. UI label. And then let's have a function that setups that label as well. So let's add our name label to our view and start constraining it as well. So where do you want to place it? Right underneath the image, I would say. So name label should be, its top constraint should be, top anchor should be constrained to the image view bottom anchor, but also with a little constant, so spacing to it, so it's not just like starting right underneath it, but with a little spacing of 10 points, right? So is active equals true. And then also let's center it on the X axis by name label center X anchor, name label center, whoops, what is it? Yeah, it is center X anchor. Oh, it's because of that. There we go. Constraint equal to the safe areas center X anchor is active true. And since the label is default black, let's have name label text color being white. Okay, that's not having any text yet assigned, right? So let's also in our setup data assign to the name label, to the text property, the Amiibo name. And let's call setup name. So we actually end up having the label in our view and rerun the app so we can see everything works perfectly fine. And we haven't done any error. All right, tapping on a random Amiibo, let's say Link Archer. Super random. Oh, there we go, Link Archer. We can barely see it. Let's just switch to black. I think black-white contrast. I mean, it's a design flaw. You should never have that hard of a contrast, but it's better for now to see that everything works. So let's Link Rider. Link Rider just works. We have the image, we have the name label. Let's implement our dismiss button. It's super simple. We're just defining a dismiss button, which is of an instance of UI button, right? And then we are setting up setup dismiss button and say view at dismiss button, and let's constrain it. Where you want to constrain it, let's put it on the bottom, as you have seen in the beginning of the video. So the bottom anchor should be constrained to the safe areas bottom anchor, but let's put a little spacing to that as well. And now it's not a plus, but a minus value that we want to use. And why is that? It's a small catch, because the coordinate for the view starts here. It's 0, 0. And as it goes to the right, it goes to the plus, I don't know, until the width. If it's a width of 300 and 700 here, then it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 300, and then it goes down 1, 2, 3, 5, it's like 100, 200, 300, 700. And if we say, yeah, bottom anchor and then a constant of 50, then we are ending up 750, which is out of the view, what we don't want. We want to have like 700 and then minus 50, so a little spacing. So that's why we are using minus if you are assigning to the bottom, and also if we are assigning from the right, so trailing anchor or right anchor, you also have to assign a minus value, right? Because you are on 300, and if you want a spacing of 50, you want to have minus 50, so you are at 250. Make sense? It does make sense. All right, center X anchor as well, constrained to the safe areas center X anchor, so we have it in the middle as well. And then also let's set the title, to be dismiss for normal. And then also let's set a target, what should happen when we tap it. So our view controller, so self, is having a function. Let's select that function with a selector that is called dismiss VC, let's call it like, or dismiss action, let's call it like that. We will implement that function in a second. So in our view controller, select that function for touch up inside. Let's implement that. And since it's a selector that we are using to call that function, we have to add Objective-C in front of it, but not miss out on the func keyword. And all we do is actually calling self dismiss. Because dismiss is also implemented by UI view controller, and then yes, we want to animate it, and no, we don't need any completion. So once we're tapping the button, it should actually dismiss itself. Let's run the app and let's have a look if everything just works out fine. Running the app and selecting a random Mario wedding and not seeing a dismiss button because we haven't called that. Classic setup dismiss button. Rerun the app and let's see whether everything works. So let's tap on Mario Silver Edition and then dismiss it, and let's select Peach and then dismiss it, and let's select finally Link Twilight Princess. And yeah, that was basically it. You have not only learned how to implement a detail view, but also how to display data and dismiss that view again. If that video was super helpful to you, hit like, subscribe to not miss out on future videos on iOS, Vapor and whatnot, everything Swift. I'll just cover whatever I can. Check out the description box for my Patreon to support me doing YouTube full time, and also to check out my social media links to Instagram and Twitter. I'm super active on Instagram. Come on over, let's have a chat, and we can also chat in the comment section down below here. Your feedback is super welcomed, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye.